Let's talk about relatedness. And the first question is like, how do we know when something is related to something else? And I've got a picture, I've got 4 pictures up here of important furry and not so furry people in my life. And the first one is of Sammy the dog showing us his very cool ball. The second one is Victor the cat, who is like, what? How cool is Victor? Dexy the dog is reading an anatomy book, of course, and then a whole herd of humans that are related to me at my dad's 80th birthday party, surprise birthday party. I love that. So if you look at this picture, I think automatically you get a sense of who's related to whom. And if we were to keep the humans as like each picture is its own, like who's related to who amongst the 4 pictures, I think it gets pretty clear that we would group the dogs together if we were to label each critter group. We would say that the dogs are probably more closely related to each other than they are to anyone else. And then, I mean, do you agree? So if we put A and C together, if we made like a little Venn diagram of who's related to whom, who would you put in the next bubble out? Would you put the human group or would you put Victor the cat? I think, right? Like you just kind of intuitively know that Victor is probably more closely related to the dogs than the human pile, and we'll do the human pile like this, that the humans are related. Are we all related? We're definitely all related. All of us are mammals. Every critter that you see on this screen is a mammal. So you could even go so far as to label the big circle the mammal circle. And then, right, you could label this, I don't know what it would be, the cat plus dog. I don't know if those are, there's a word. They're carnivore, not carnivore. Canid, no. There's a flesh-eating word that would include all of them, and I can't think of what it is. And then these are your canines. Okay, whatever. The point is that you have a sense of what relatedness means. And how do you know? You look at anatomical similarities. You can look at genetic similarities. And hello, genetic similarities cause anatomical similarities. So you can see that we can actually quantify relatedness between organisms. Let's do another set of critters here. If we label these guys, we have a whale, a trout, a very cool frog, and a fox. How would you label these guys? I mean, my brain automatically goes, you might be tempted to do something like the whale and the fish go together because they both live in the ocean. And this fact that they both live, not necessarily in the ocean. I don't think a rainbow trout lives in the ocean. Steelhead could be, I don't know. They both live in water. That's a characteristic that actually isn't indicative of relatedness. That doesn't tell you about their genetics. In fact, the whale is a mammal, as is the fox. So in this image, our whale and our fox are more closely related to each other. So we would make our little Venn diagram like this. And then who do you think? Would a frog be more closely related to those guys, or would a fish? This is an interesting question. I have an intuitive sense of who is closer to the mammals, whether it's the amphibian or the fish. I have an intuitive sense. I don't know if that intuitive sense is real or if it's because I'm a biologist and it just has become real to me. But the frog is definitely in the next circle and the trout is in the outermost circle. And what are all these things? In the last slide, we were all mammals. All of these share a circle. So what is the circle that all these guys have? They actually are all vertebrates. I think that's probably the thing that they all have in common. And look, these guys are mammals. They're more related. Mammals are more related to each other than they are to fish or frogs. However, they're all more related to each other than they are to, say, fungi or butterflies or flowers. How does this feel? What if we do another one? We have a chameleon and a grasshopper and another fish and a praying mantis. I love mantises. And do you agree that you would go, okay, I think the insects are related to each other. And then the fish and, this is an interesting one because I don't think that you would say, I don't think we have the insects being more closely related to a fish or a lizard. I think that I would draw it that that the lizard and the fish are related to each other and they're all animals. And we'll talk about more, like why? Why is that? And in our section on tree thinking, evolutionary trees, we'll get to look at the ancestor group of these and see how that connection, see if we can figure out that connection. I don't know if I have another one. I do. I have another one of what are all these things? Oh my gosh. Look at this one. I was just Zooming with this one who is going to do a presentation in Seattle on his chemistry research, what he's researching nanoparticles right now. So I would say A, B is my favorite, C and D. I know that B and A are most closely related to each other. I had to look that up in order to know this. And then I know that D is next and C is the outgroup for these guys. And these are all primates. How do you feel about relatedness? Do you feel like, okay, I'm kind of getting a sense of how this thing works? I think, yeah, we have a sense of what relatedness is. Now we're going to talk about how we name things and classify them using taxonomy.